Hello creative friends, this is Joy coming to you with another art journal page. And this particular journal page that I wanted to do is similar to one that I did a couple weeks ago for the fantasy art event. And in that particular journal page I had a couple of images, and an image of a woman and an image of a wolf. And I wanted to do something similar to that, but I wanted to use my own drawing skills to actually draw the figures on the journal page. And I also wanted to do different colors and different positions. So I decided to cover my art journal page in some acrylic white. And then on top of that, I am adding some other colors of oranges, yellows, and I add a little bit of blue to the bottom. And it probably would have been easier or made more sense if I put the color on a plate or something and then, added it to my page, because just putting it on the page, there was times where I had a little bit more paint on there than I wanted to. But and like here in the sky, I got a lot of yellow, so I'm trying to cover up some of that with some more white. So I kind of went back and forth until I got the page to where I was happy with it. And the acrylic paint tends to dry out rather quickly, so I had a spray bottle of water there that I was using to spray my page with whenever the page or the paint on the page started to dry out. And so here, after it dried, I wanted to go back and add a little bit more white to it. It seemed like it had a lot of color, more than I had planned or thought I would want on there. And plus, up in the upper left-hand corner, I had, while it was sitting off to the side drying, I had laid something on top of it, not paying attention, and it actually stuck to it, so it kind of ripped my page a little bit. So that's, I guess, how it goes. And so I'm trying to also repair that, where my page was, a layer was torn off of my page up there in the upper left-hand corner. So that was a little disappointing. But, everything's fixable. And, if it was, had completely ripped through, I would have just, started with a different page. So anyway, I found this picture of a cheetah. It was actually on a calendar that I've had for a long time. So I'm using that as a reference photo to draw the animal on this journal page. And because I'm recording and showing, my drawing of the figures and the painting of them, this video, of course, is a little bit lengthy, but I did try to speed it up and, cut out a lot of things, areas where, I could shorten things so that you can see, the main parts of the video and making this art journal page. So I basically just freehand draw. I just kind of use portion and perspective and, negative space to kind of try to get the figure drawn in. And I add some of the features just so I could see if the proportions look correct or not, and how they relate to other parts, of the animal, and then make adjustments to where I feel like adjustments need to be made. And I do the same with the figure. I was just showing you there, I found a picture of a woman in somewhat of the position that I wanted to draw my figure, although I'm just using it for reference. But what I end up painting on this page is not at all like the picture, if that makes any sense. So I just wanted to have a reference for the position that I wanted the figure in, but not necessarily, the style and clothes and all that. So, because I have had something in mind as to what I wanted this figure to be wearing. And so here I'm just quickly sketching the figure in on the page as well, trying to pay attention to, like I did on the animal, the proportions and, you know, different parts, how they are in relation to other parts, to try to get it drawn out, sketched out on my page. And then once I get the figure sketched out on my page, then I do add some, you know, wings to her, because I also wanted to add some butterfly wings onto this figure, like I did with the one that I did a couple weeks ago. Like I said, the only difference is the animal is different, and the woman's going to be a little bit different, and the layout's different with different colors and everything. But you know, I wanted to do a figure with an animal, you know, and have some kind of wings on the figure. So like I like the one I did a couple weeks ago. But that one, I actually used an image from a magazine for the animal, which was a wolf, and for the woman, and then I just added on a background and some wings to the woman. So here, now that I've got my figures pretty much sketched out, I'm going in and I'm using the acrylic paint to paint in the animal here. And I'm just using some chocolate brown and some white, and I'm adding on my palette, I added some of the chocolate brown in the white to get the lightest color, and I'm adding a little bit of brown paint to it to make it a little bit darker for the darker areas, and a little bit more white. So I actually have like a medium, I guess, tone, and then I'm adding, you know, to it to make lighter tans for areas, and then darker browns for the shadow area. So my idea was that I would put down like a base for the animal and get all my highlighting and shadows and whatnot in the animal itself, that would, you know, that would make sense for this animal, and then go back in and do the detail work. And it actually turned out really good. I was really pleased with the way that the whole page turned out, but especially with the cheetah. I really like the way it turned out. So again, I'm just, you know, referring to my reference photos for the areas where the shadows are and where the highlighted areas are, to try to get down on my page the basic painting of this figure. And I really like to draw animals. That's one thing that I've always enjoyed drawing from as little as I can remember, is animals. When I was little, I drew every kind of animal you could think of, and I don't incorporate as many animals into my artwork as I like to, and so I want to, you know, start trying to incorporate more animals in my artwork. And so this, I thought, would be a good way to do that, you know, to have, because I actually have only recently, like just within the last couple of years, started doing figure drawing and using figures in my art journal pages. And I, you know, learned that from taking several online classes, and then of course I've practiced it and stuff. So I feel like that I've gotten better at figures. But again, I would like to incorporate more animals in my art journal pages as well. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to do that. And it seems like a lot of the art journal pages that I create I don't do a lot of freehand drawing and painting on them because it just is so time consuming. And like this video here, it's, ended up being a pretty lengthy video, even though I sped up a lot of it and cut out, things that, where I could cut out that didn't make sense to leave in. It still ended up being somewhat of a lengthy video. But, it does show my full process of sketching out the figures and painting them. And so, people that are interested in seeing that, at least they can, watch that, or they can skip through it, speed through it even faster if they choose to, see the highlights and the finished journal page. I do that sometimes when I'm watching videos. If I don't have a lot of time and I really am, kind of wanting to see how they progress, I'll kind of skip through videos. So now that I've got the basic background or paint on this animal with the highlights and the shadows, now I'm going in and doing the detail work, and starting with the tail. I mixed, it's not a black because I felt that black would be, too stark or, too dark. So I took and added black to the chocolate brown. So it's kind of a really dark brown instead of a black. And to me, I think that made it, look more natural, and just started adding, spots to this cheetah. And as you can see, I kind of skipped ahead because, it's time consuming putting in all of them spots. But at the same time, I mean, it's well worth the effort. As you can see, it just turned out beautifully. And not all the spots are the same. They're not the same size. They're not the same shape. I noticed as I was looking at my reference photo. And there's really no rhyme or reason to them, so I just kind of went for it and just, started adding in, spots of different sizes, and just tried to fill in this animal with all of these spots. And I noticed that there wasn't really a whole lot of spots on the, feet or the face. So, of course, I only went so far down on the legs with the spots and only on certain areas of the face. And so here I'm adding the pads of the feet for the one front and one back foot that is up off the ground. And of course the spots on the face are much smaller than the spots on the body, and some of them are even on the top of the head. I did them a little bit lighter because the top of the head is, where there's like highlight. It's up there from, the sun or whatever, reflecting down. And so while I had that color, I went ahead and painted in the rest of, the face, the eye, and the nose and the mouth to get that in there. And the ear. And so as I was, painting this, I tried to, pay close attention to the details, but not be so particular that, everything had to be like perfect or whatever, because it's never going to be perfect. So here I'm going in with some white, on the eyes and on the tips of the ears. And I also take and water down some of the lighter color and the darker color to where it's really, really, really watery, and use that to add even more shadows and more highlights to this animal, which you'll see that here in a minute. Here I'm adding a little bit more shadow to the face with the watered down brown, or the dark brown. And like I said, I made it really watery so that it just very lightly tinted what I have on here, because I don't, want to cover up, obviously, all the work that I had done, but I felt like that in areas on this animal, I needed to add more shadows and more highlighted areas. So that's what I'm doing here, is finishing up on just the shadows and the highlights. So a little bit more of a shadow under the belly. And then more shadows around the legs. And this is where, like I said, I just use a really watered down kind of brown. And it's just enough to where you could still see the spots and all the work that I done, but just makes it just a little bit darker in the areas where it should, be a little bit darker because of the shadows. And then around the top, across the top, I do the same with a very watered down white, for to highlight the top of the animal. So like I said, when once I was done with this, I was really, really happy with the way it turned out. And I also used that same watered down brown color to do some detailing on the 2 feet that are on the ground to kind of show a little bit of not real detailed of the toes, but enough so that you kind of get the idea, that it's for the paws, so that you get the idea of the paws. And I'm would like to practice painting animals more. Like I said, I grew up, when I was growing up, I always liked to draw animals, wildlife, but I don't have a whole lot of experience at painting them. So that's definitely something that I would like to do more of. I really enjoyed painting this one. It was a lot of fun painting it, and like I said, I was really pleased with the way it turned out. So that made me happy that it turned out, even better than I thought. I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, but it turned out really, really nice. So that made me really happy. So yeah, I think I'm definitely going to incorporate more animals in my art journal pages. I think that would be, a lot of fun, and help and give me more practice, at painting animals. So then, the next step would be to maybe, use some of this on, doing an actual canvas, painting. I think would be nice. But for now, it's just fun doing this, in the art journal, and which is why I like, art journaling. And I hear a lot of people ask, I've seen online where a lot of people say, why do you art journal? Asking people why they art journal. And I like to art journal because I like to be able to do something that's artistic and creative without feeling the pressure of having like this, canvas and paints and this big production that I feel like I have to try to, turn out some kind of masterpiece, and it just puts a lot of stress on you. And so art journaling is a way for me to be able to be creative, to paint and play and experiment. And if it doesn't turn out that great, who cares? You just turn the page and go to the next page. So it really gives me a place to, practice and explore and, be creative and just have fun and no pressure. you know, when you're art journaling. No pressure at all. If it comes out great, then great. If it doesn't, then great. Either way, it's great. It's, you know, it's good. It's all good, and you know, you just move on to the next thing, you know. So, but yeah, so this was fun, a lot of fun, and I definitely plan on, you know, trying to do some more art journal pages with animals and figures in them. So here I'm, you know, moving on to the girl, and my secret recipe, if you want to call it that, for skin tone is pink and apricot orange. And I mix those two with a little bit of white. And if you add more orange to the mixture, it gives more of a like tanned tone. And of course, more white gives it more of a lighter color. More pink gives it more of a pinkish color. I mean, you can play around with that formula and, you know, really get a multitude of different shades of skin tone. Obviously, you don't want it too pink or too orange, but if you get, you know, play with the mixture, you can come up with, you know, quite a few different, you know, shades of skin tones that, you know, work really well and look really nice. And I did add a touch of the brown in there for the shadow areas, and I'm using some of the brown because I still had some of that really dark, like brown that I used for the spots on my plate. So I thought, well, I'll use that for her hair as well while I have it on there. So and I used a little bit, like I said, for the shadow. And here I've got some acrylic red, and I had decided that I wanted to make her dress red. I wanted to paint her dress red for whatever reason. Red is my favorite color. I love red, and I just thought that it would be nice to paint this figure with a red dress on. Now the red acrylic paint that I had, come to find out, was pretty transparent, and so I had to put several coats on it for one to get it to not be so transparent. But you know, it turned out, and of course I did the same like I did with the cheetah. As I was painting her, I was adding a little bit of brown to the red to put in the shadows where I thought that, you know, there would be shadows on this dress, and then use the red paint straight out of the tube as like the brightest color because it was a pretty bright red. So I used that as the lightest, and then added browns to it to darken it, and, you know, to add the secondary colors and the shadow colors. And I decided that, you know, I wanted her to have this long red dress on. I thought it would be, you know, pretty with, you know, her having a red dress on. Yeah, my apologies for being a little off camera there trying to do the bottom, but basically I was just had put some of the brown across the bottom of the dress and then was painting it up into the dress so that the bottom of the dress had, you know, some shadow on it. And then here I'm doing the sleeves. And, you know, I'm, like I said, only have in the past like year or two have I started doing figures. And so, you know, you have to practice, and the more you do it, I guess, you know, the easier it gets and the better you get at it or whatever. So I'm still, you know, in training on figure painting, but it's good enough for my art journal page, and, you know, I did like the way the figure turned out, so that's the most important thing, you know, that I do like the way it turned out, so that made me happy that it turned out, you know, pretty well. And I decided to like pretty much do the same thing on her that I did on the cheetah, which is basically get the color down and the shadows and everything on her, and then go back in and do the detail work after I was done. So here I'm just adding a little bit more shadows, trying to add some shadows to the dress so that it looks like the dress has got some folds to it. And then while I have that flesh tone, I'm doing her hands. And you know, I didn't want to do a whole lot of detail for hands either, so it's just really simple, you know, hands. And then I add a little bit of shadow to the hands as well. But you don't, you know, when you do figures, you don't have to get too, you know, detailed on all that stuff. So my camera shut off on me, and the only additional thing I did was I used some of the red for her lips, and then I put a shadow on the ground underneath the both figures, and then I started painting in the wings. And plus I drew a pattern on the wings because I felt like they need to have some kind of pattern. So I've got these sparkling, or I'm sorry, not sparkling, they're called Twinkling H20 watercolor paints, and that's what I decided to use to paint the wings with on this girl. And because I thought, well, that'd be really nice because they're almost like a metallic paint, but it's watercolor paint. And the only thing that I was struggling with, and I don't know that you can tell it in the videos, in this video, is that it seemed to want to separate, and so it wasn't going on evenly, and it kind of looks like it's going on evenly, but I was somewhat struggling with, because I had to keep brushing it out, because it seemed like that the pigment and the metallic would like puddle in areas and be darker in some areas and lighter in other areas. So yeah, I was having a little bit of problems trying to get it to, you know, be all even. But then in the end, it didn't matter because I ended up going over it and kind of, you know, making it to where it wasn't even anyway. So I ended up kind of, you know, messing it up or whatever. Not really mess up, but just like went over it and kind of took off some of it so that some areas were lighter and other areas were darker, instead of just having it all like one, you know, tone or whatever. So, because I thought, well, it, you know, doesn't make sense that it would be completely even because there would be some variation in the color. So yeah, anyway, so I don't know why I was fussing with it so much at this point to try to get it completely evenly, you know, color and distributed, but I did. And after painting, well, you'll see here in a little bit, after painting the wings, like I'm doing here, I thought that that would be the end of it. But I guess the more I looked at it, the more I felt like something more needed to be done. So that's when I went back and kind of varied the color and then did some more to the wings. So I ended up adding on more to this video because I wasn't completely happy with, you know, the wings and the way they turned out. I just felt like that, you know, they needed something more added to them. But in the end, like I said, I was really pleased with the way this whole page turned out. I thought was really turned out pretty cool. The girl, I felt like could have been better, but you know, it is just an art journal page, so I tried not to fuss about it too much, and you know, just kind of got to a point where I was like, well, that's good enough. So here I wasn't sure, like I had all them different colors up top, and then I was like, I don't know what to do on the bottom. I mean, this is going to be a pretty colorful wing. I wish I would have, when I did the wings, I wish I would have actually looked at some butterflies and picked out, you know, a butterfly to use as a reference for, you know, the colors and stuff, because I kind of felt like that, you know, all these different colors on these wings really probably isn't realistic, but, you know, whatever. It is what it is, and, you know, I, like I said, had fun coloring it or painting it, and so, yeah. So here I'm using Prismacolor color pencils to go around the wings and try to add a little bit more detail to the wings, but it really wasn't, you really couldn't see it that much, you know, a little bit, but not as much as, you know, I would have liked. And here I'm using, I think it's a black one, to kind of put the lines in, and then I use it to try to do some shading and whatnot, but it really was not working real well on top of this watercolor paint, you know, so, and I did try to at one point, which I don't think I've showed it in the video, use like a marker or something, but that wasn't working either. So here I have these felt tip markers that I decided that, oh, this will work great on her face to do the detail work, because it has a very fine tip on these markers, but well, they're not markers. Well, I guess it can be considered markers, or felt tip pens. But what I didn't realize until after I started using them, or until I did her face, the detail on her face, they bleed out. So would not recommend using felt tip markers if you're going to do stuff like this, because they did bleed out, and I was having some struggles with the eyes bleeding out and the mouth, but you know, I ended up, I guess, getting it to a point where, again, I was happy with it, or, you know, okay with it. So here I'm using the Prismacolor black pencil to put in the details of the nose and to do some more shadowing where I felt like it needed more shadowing. And at first, I did quite a bit of shadowing, probably, well, I guess more than it needed, and I wasn't real happy with it, and so then at one point I do kind of try to take some of it off, but and I use my white Stabilo pencil to or pen to try to add the whites to the eyes, back to the eyes, because as I was saying, the felt tip pen was bleeding out, and then I finally got tired of fussing with the felt tip pen, that I just grabbed a regular ballpoint pen that I had on my desk. I'm like, forget the felt tip pen because it's not working. I'll just get this black ballpoint pen and use that on there, whatever works, right? So yeah. Oh, and then I decided to use my white Stabilo pen to add a little bit of a design around the neckline of the dress and around the sleeves. I felt like it needed something, and some buttons. I just did, you know, real simple. I didn't get too fancy with the dress. And so at this point, see, what do? I don't remember. Like I said, at this point, I was, I was trying to add some lighter areas to the face where I thought it, you know, needed to be a little bit lighter. But that wasn't working. So yeah, I end up, when I went to wipe it off, I noticed, oh, I like it better because it's taken off some of this pencil that I put on there, and that was my problem. I had too much, shadowy pencil on there. So here I have a quote that I found in my stash that says, "Life is a precious gift in which anything is possible." And I thought, well, that makes, that's a really nice, like, little quote to put on this art journal page. So I decided to apply that with some collage page. And like I said, I thought I was done, but then I kept thinking about the wings and felt like that they needed something more. So I decided to put some black on the wings, but the straight black was too stark. So I thought, oh, I will just do like a really dark brown like I did for the spots on the animal, on the cheetah. But the brown that I grabbed wasn't the chocolate brown that I used on the cheetah. It actually was a metallic brown. So, well, I went with it. After I squeezed it out, I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't look like the same brown. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll just go with it. So I took that, add a little bit of black in, and used that to put some darker color onto to the wings. And I do like it much better after adding the metallic black, I guess is what you would call it. Metallic brown with some black. So I really did like the way that it turned out. I was pretty pleased with it, with the wings after I did that. And I could have kept going and did more to it. Like I was thinking, oh, maybe I should do like a dark brown outline around the whole wings and whatnot. But I did feel like that it needed a little bit more than just that. So I still had some of that darker color left over and put spots or dots or whatever on the inside of these colors on the wings. So, like I said, I could have gone on and on and on with these butterfly wings to do whatever, to try to do different things. But I finally got to a point where I was like, okay, enough is enough fussing with this thing. It's time to call it done. And there's a point in time where you have to decide, when something is done. Can't remember who it was, but some famous painters had said something about paintings are never finished, they're abandoned, or something like that. And I tend to agree with that. I think you just get to the point where you're either tired of working on it, or just decide that you don't want to mess with it anymore and call it done. So that's kind of the way this was. But so yeah, since I did the circles or whatever on the top, I felt like that something should be done on the bottom. So I add a little bit of black to that as well. And here I'm again trying to water down as watery as I can get it, the black, to just add some shadow. Now I started out with what I did was right there I kept going back to that one area, and if you wet watercolor paint again, it will reactivate, which is what happened. So I found, well, if I just go over it once, it's fine. It would just put like a light coat of darker over top of it. But I started out where I kept trying to, I don't know what I was trying to do, but anyway, the pink there, I ended up completely removing the pink, and so I was trying to fix it. But that's pretty much the art journal page for today. So if you like this video, you can like, subscribe to my channel, or leave a comment. I would love to hear from you. So until next time, happy creating. Bye-bye.